You are giving this to me? Just giving it?
Without anything back? It's just an orange, kid. You look like you need it more than I do.
The orange was the beginning of everything. Garrett Finn had been working the supply counter at Waystation Dun for 3 years, which was long enough to know all the regulars, most of the irregulars, and the particular category of person who stood at the edge of the counter and looked at things without reaching for them. They were usually hungry. They were usually calculating exactly how much they could afford and whether wanting something was worth the vulnerability of admitting it. The girl had been standing at the edge of his counter for 4 minutes before he noticed her. She was small, smaller than most Gravothi he'd seen, though he hadn't seen many, with the ash-gray skin of her species and the large dark eyes that always looked to human perception like they were in the process of figuring something out. Her hair was cropped so close it was barely there. Her tunic was worn to the texture of something that had been washed too many times in not enough water. She was holding an orange from the produce section the way someone holds something they know they're going to put back. Garrett watched her set it down. Pick it up again. Look at the price board. Set it down. He leaned across the counter. Here, he said, and held out his hand. She looked at his open palm like it was a trap. You are giving this to me, she said. Her standard was precise and slightly formal, the way it was with people who had learned it from a text rather than from hearing it. Just giving it. Without anything back. It's just an orange, kid, he said. You look like you need it more than I do. She took it. She held it carefully in both hands for a moment, and then she looked up at him with those large dark eyes and said, with complete seriousness, I will remember this. He had thought that was a polite thing people said. He was wrong. Her name was Pip, which was not her Gravothi name. That was longer and had sounds in it that human vocal architecture wasn't built for, but the name she'd decided humans could manage. She was 17 by Gravothi reckoning, which placed her somewhere around 20 in human equivalent. She had been living on Waystation Dun for 8 months, working the sorting bays in exchange for a bunk and meals that were technically food. She came back to his counter the next day. And the day after. Not always to buy things. Sometimes just to talk in the careful formal standard that slowly, over weeks, became less careful and less formal as she apparently decided he was safe enough to be casual with. He learned that she was a tracker, not the hunting kind, the pattern kind. She could look at movement data, supply chain records, atmospheric readings, and find things that weren't supposed to be findable. She had been trying to tell people something for 6 months. They don't listen, she said one evening, when the counter was quiet and she was sitting on the stool he'd started keeping on her side. I show them the data. I explain what it means. They look at me and they see. She gestured at herself, the worn tunic, the cropped hair, the youth. This. And they decide the data is wrong. What does the data say? Garrett asked. She looked at him for a moment, assessing, and then she laid it out. Supply chain disruptions in a pattern that didn't match any known market fluctuation. Atmospheric sensor readings from the outer beacon network that had stopped being reported 3 weeks ago. Not malfunctioned, stopped, as in someone had turned off the reporting. Migration patterns from 3 Gravothi deep-range monitoring posts showing mass movement of species that only moved like that when something was coming. Something, she said, was coming. Garrett was not a scientist. He was not an analyst. He ran a supply counter on a way station and he knew how to listen. Who have you told? He asked. Station Commander Veth. The Interstellar Monitoring Office representative. The Trade Collective liaison. She listed them without inflection. Commander Veth told me the atmospheric sensors were a maintenance issue. The IMO representative asked how old I was. The trade liaison said the migration data was incomplete. Were any of them right? He asked. No, she said simply. He believed her. He didn't know enough about atmospheric sensors or migration patterns or supply chain analysis to evaluate her data technically. What he knew was that she had been coming to his counter for 3 months. And in 3 months she had not once said something that turned out to be wrong. Not about the supply order that was going to be short before the manifest confirmed it. Not about the transport that was going to be late before the delay was announced. Not about the maintenance problem in Bay 4 that 3 different people had told her wasn't a problem until it was. He believed her because she had earned it. "What do you need?" he asked. She blinked. "What?" "To make someone with actual authority listen. What do you need?" She stared at him for a long moment. Then she said, "A verified data package. Properly formatted with sourcing. From a registered analyst. Or someone with station credentials above grade 3. He paused. "I don't have station credentials. I have grade 4 credentials," Garrett said. "Supply and logistics. It's not analysis, but it's registered." She stared at him. "I'm not signing something I don't understand," he said. "You're going to explain every piece of it to me until I do. Then we put together the package properly, and we submit it through the formal channel with my credentials attached." He leaned on the counter. "Deal." She opened her mouth, closed it. Then very quietly, "Why?" "Because you're right and nobody's listening," he said. "That bothers me." They worked for 11 days. Every evening after the counter closed, at the back table of the station canteen, Pip walking him through datasets and Garrett asking the questions that a non-specialist would ask, the ones that turned out to be exactly the right questions, because they forced her to explain the connections in language that any formal review board could follow. He formatted. She verified. He submitted under his grade 4 credentials with her name as primary analyst. The response came in 4 days. Not a dismissal. An acknowledgement. Then a request for supplementary data. Then an emergency review flag. On the 41st day after the orange, the outer beacon network came back online. All of it simultaneously, broadcasting readings that confirmed everything Pip had said. The sky was moving,